Right now, over 5 million wild donkeys are destroying fragile oases in the extreme conditions of Australian deserts. This seemingly harmless beast has become a biological weapon. 5 million animals, 40 degrees of searing heat, $50 million burned on containment. A population equal to New Zealand systematically dismantles the ecosystem. A massive herd converges on a shrinking waterhole. Thousands of hooves strike the cracked earth. Thick dust chokes the atmosphere. High above the red plains, a helicopter banks sharply. The pilot activates a thermal imaging camera. Glowing heat signatures reveal a relentless swarm. The state treats this invasion as a full-scale war. Snipers fire from the sky. Ground teams deploy electronic collars and steel traps. Yet the biological math defeats the budget. The species thrives. While Australia loses this desert war, another region flips the equation. China faces a similar donkey surge across its arid grasslands. But instead of eradication, they built an industrial machine. They turned this walking resource into a massive supply chain. This deep processing industry generates $6 billion every single year. A lucrative global empire stands as an unsolved puzzle against the backdrop of the Australian failure. An expenditure of $50 million makes perfect sense. Consider the ruthless biological math of this species. 200 to 300 animals arrive. 15 years pass. 3,000 to 4,000 beasts emerge. They monopolize critical water points. Hundreds surround a single hole. Livestock die of dehydration. Broken fences cost northern landowners $3 million annually. But the true threat lies underground. Focus on the physical strike. 500 pounds of moving mass. 4 narrow, hardened hooves hit dirt. Each step acts like a press. Impact pressure reaches 40 pounds per square inch. Desert soil relies on fragile microstructures. The hooves crush this delicate crust. The ground compresses. Pores collapse completely. Rainwater cannot penetrate the dense layer. Severe erosion accelerates for decades. Vegetation vanishes. The land suffocates. Thousands of hardened hooves continuously strike the earth, steadily turning the last fragile oases into stretches of completely lifeless mud. This destructive biomachine did not appear out of nowhere. It is the forgotten legacy of 19th century transport engineering. In the mid-19th century, the Australian gold rush demands massive logistics. Settlers push into one of the harshest arid regions on the planet. Temperatures routinely hit 40 degrees Celsius. Horses collapse. Draft cattle fail. Humans desperately need a highly efficient transport engine. They find it in the imported donkey. These animals function as perfect biological tractors. They convert minimal water and dry scrub into steady pulling power. Transport routes stretch across hundreds of kilometers of scorched earth. Zero infrastructure. Donkeys haul heavy steel mining equipment through the dust. They carry massive wooden water barrels to isolated camps. During the construction of the overland telegraph, these pack animals drag heavy spools of copper wire. That single communication route spans over 3,000 kilometers across the continent. Then the early 20th century arrives. Railways slice through the outback, motor vehicles replace muscle power, the biological transport network instantly becomes obsolete. Engineers and miners simply release their herds. Thousands of abandoned donkeys wander away from the old goldfields and rail lines. They disappear into the vast interior. No tracking, no control. Thousands of gray shadows simply dissolve into the endless heat haze. Humans abandoned the herds. They multiplied quickly. They conquered the continent. The government declared a high-tech war. The 1980s changed the strategy. Enter the Judas donkey tactic. Capture one animal, attach a heavy telemetry collar, release it. The trader seeks its herd. A radio signal pulses. Sensors lock on. A Robinson helicopter approaches. Rotor blades chop dead air. A deafening hum fills the desert. Aviation hunts a primitive swarm. GPS tracks the biological chaos. Marksmen fire. 2,000 to 5,000 fall, but the swarm adapts. Nature outpaces military tactics. It fails, like scooping water from a desert. 7.6 million square kilometers. Radical culling in Australia is just an attempt to contain the catastrophe. But on the other side of the planet, a similar biological threat has provoked a completely different technological approach to the problem. On the extreme altitudes of the Qinghai-Tibet Plateau, the response to biological overpopulation took a sharply different path. Facing immense pressure on a fragile ecosystem, China rejected simple eradication in favor of engineering massive semi-wild farming systems. This high-altitude battleground covers 2.5 million square kilometers, sitting at an average elevation of 4,000 meters where resources are critically limited. Across this severe terrain, the mechanics of an ecological crisis unfold with ruthless precision. During the brutal dry seasons, thick clouds of abrasive dust rise above the depleted vegetation as dense herds of wild qiangs descend upon the few remaining water reserves. They aggressively push domestic yaks away from the shrinking glacial streams to secure hydration. Absolute water monopoly. The fragile alpine grass, which requires months to regenerate even a few centimeters in the cold climate, is ground into barren dirt under thousands of relentless hooves. This conflict represents a rigid equation of resource depletion rather than just a natural phenomenon. Unregulated wild animals compete directly for scarce calories against a massive agricultural machine consisting of 12 million yaks and 30 million sheep. When authorities factor the invasive herds into their precise grazing calculations, the resulting ecological deficit forces a drastic reduction in permitted domestic livestock. The biological presence of the qiangs alone mathematically reshapes the carrying capacity of the entire geographic region. Unchecked habitat degradation directly threatens a Western livestock industry generating over $20 billion every single year. Losing this vital output is statistically equivalent to erasing the gross regional product of an entire province. Total economic failure. Instead of deploying military-grade culling tactics against the roaming animals, state planners finalized a radical economic pivot, transforming the immense biological threat into the foundation of a highly profitable processing industry. A $20 billion industry needed saving. Planners locked chaotic expansion into controlled zones. Herds of 5,000 became giant incubators. Wild chaos ended. Strict geometry replaced random movement. Thousands of hectares form one grid. 3,000 to 5,000 heads move. They operate as a single living mechanism. Engineers weaponized extreme biological endurance. Herds consume rough agricultural waste. Dry corn stalks and wheat straw feed them. Other livestock starve. Donkeys simply thrive. Managers calculate water supply strictly. They consume 30 to 40% less. Cattle require much more liquid. Extreme drought tolerance creates profit. Farms save water. Zero ecological risk exists. The system scales up. Herds rapidly expand. Managed populations relentlessly multiply across the freezing northern deserts, while automated agricultural zones continuously expand without draining the fragile local water reserves. But infinite growth remains fundamentally impossible. As soon as the living biomass reaches the strict parameter of 250 kilograms, a predetermined extraction algorithm engages. Specialists move through the semi-wild enclosures with the cold calculation of industrial engineers, meticulously assessing the high density and muscle mass of the living objects. Pure biological calculus. Why exactly does the quality of the skin, rather than the yield of the meat, dictate the rules for this entire logistical chain? The answer lies in the downstream biochemical production, where the thick dorsal dermis represents the absolute highest economic value. While a base weight of 200 kilograms roughly equals the heavy mass of a large touring motorcycle, the flesh serves merely as a secondary byproduct. The primary focus remains entirely on securing a flawless surface area devoid of any environmental scratches or structural damage. Strict physical audits based on age and dermal integrity completely replace any informal herding traditions. The entire supply network stretching across northern China operates on these uncompromising standards, leaving no room for natural deviations. The transition from a breathing creature into a categorized raw material occurs through ruthless mathematical precision. The loading gates open exclusively for units standing exactly 1.2 meters. Specimens meeting that strict 1.2 meter threshold enter a closed-loop processing system. Here, biology completely surrenders to industrial physics. The automated conveyor never stops. The line operates 24 hours a day. Heavy steel hooks hoist the bodies. They glide along the overhead rail straight into the primary washing zone. Industrial nozzles blast the raw material from every conceivable angle. The water pressure hits 3,000 pounds per square inch. This kinetic force equals a small car pressing down on a single coin. It obliterates organic residue and neutralizes characteristic odors instantly. Clinical hygiene is non-negotiable. The steel track pulls the load into the chilling chambers. The air bites at a constant 4 degrees Celsius, carrying the sharp metallic scent of clean flesh. For 12 to 24 hours, thermodynamics dictates the rules. The cold slowly extracts residual core heat. Muscle fibers contract and stabilize. This thermal lock secures the naturally low fat content and turns soft tissue into a firm, dark red mass. This precise stabilization prepares the structure for the perfect industrial cut without tearing a single fiber. Yet the nutrient-dense flesh remains merely a byproduct. Hundreds of frozen, dark red carcasses hang silently in the chill rooms, awaiting the next stage of deep processing. Meat disposal ends. The skin holds the true value. This raw layer launches everything. A massive chemical empire begins. Standard food processing stops immediately. Hides plunge into pool-sized extraction vats. Heavy industrial blades slash the dermis. Alkaline water softens the fibrous tissue. Boiling starts. Intense heat attacks the organic material. Thermal energy breaks the molecular bonds. Tough protein helices unravel completely. Collagen melts down. The liquid turns a deep amber. It boils for many continuous hours. Steam carries a heavy, dense scent. Water evaporates. The boiling solution grows extremely dense. It perfectly mimics thick, hot honey. Extreme thickness traps the rising bubbles. Filtration begins. Microscreens catch the solid, raw impurities. Pure liquid collagen flows into molds. Temperature drops sharply. The amber mass hardens entirely. 2,000 medical years condense instantly. Cooling creates solid black gelatin blocks. This single layer of animal skin drives a merciless biochemical extraction, fueling a global market valued at over $3 billion. Yet the industry extracts extreme super profits not only after the final slaughter. This resilient living asset can generate a lucrative premium product every single day. Outside the steel facility stretches the unforgiving, semi-arid wasteland of northern China, where abrasive dust winds and chronic water shortages break ordinary livestock. Inside, an entirely different reality operates through a sterile environment of high-speed thermodynamics and mechanical precision. Unlike standard dairy cattle, these animals demand an exceptionally gentle extraction process to prevent physiological stress. Engineers deploy automated milking systems equipped with soft silicone suction cups. These specialized attachments mechanically imitate the exact natural nursing rhythm of a newborn foal. The moment the warm milk leaves the body, a critical race against microscopic degradation begins. Raw milk flows directly into integrated rapid cooling systems. The fluid temperature plummets from 38 degrees down to precisely 4 degrees Celsius in just 3 minutes. Pure thermal shock. This rapid thermodynamic drop immediately paralyzes aggressive bacterial growth and preserves the highly sensitive micronutrients. Following a strictly controlled pasteurization cycle, automated factory lines take over the final stage. High-speed machinery seals the sensitive liquid inside sterile, multi-layer aluminum cartons to block out all destructive light and oxygen. Logistics teams instantly load these secured packages, dispatching the cold payload straight into a rapidly expanding premium dairy market. Advanced milking works on farms. Gelatin boiling requires domestic stock, but untouchable wild herds remain. The law forbids touching them. Zero blood spills. Laws ban culling. How do we turn untouchable pests into highly managed resources? They roam 2 million square kilometers. That area physically exceeds Mexico. The dry season hits hard. Dust chokes everything. Grass completely vanishes. Pastures turn to dead earth. Food becomes critically scarce everywhere. Wild populations eat everything left. Domestic cattle begin to starve. Resource competition turns utterly brutal. An entire ecosystem faces collapse. Humans intervene immediately. Scientists engineer nature. Researchers arrive in roaring trucks. Local herders join the operation. Together they build artificial balance. They track the massive herds. Drones scan the exhausted landscape. They deploy semi-natural management models. They isolate the dominant males. They strictly control the mating. Birth rates drop. Population structures slowly become stable. The grazing pressure finally falls. This strict biological engineering prevents a massive regional starvation crisis while forming an entirely new development path for vast plateau territories. This symbiosis of strict control and deep processing forms a model that challenges the methods of an entire continent, Australia. In the outback, the heavy roar of helicopter blades shatters the dry air. Marksmen track moving targets through scoped rifles. Below them, massive feral herds scatter across the red dust. These animals have roamed this land for over 100 years. Here, shooters treat them strictly as a pest. They pull the trigger. Carcasses stay in the dirt to rot. Now look across the ocean. The quiet, rhythmic hum of automated conveyors in Chinese processing plants reveals a totally different reality: zero waste. Engineers process every hide, muscle, and drop of milk. An absolute ecological burden transforms into the core of a multi-billion-dollar global value chain. The fate of a single species exposes a sharp contrast in how entire nations build wealth. One government spends millions of dollars to destroy a biological resource. Another engineers it for maximum yield. This Asian extraction blueprint projects a stark future for the Australian territory. Decades of airborne hunting have never solved the grazing crisis. The herds always return. But cold, calculated integration flips the entire equation. Firing a bullet simply burns capital. Running a factory line generates long-term stability. Millions of wild beasts walking the deserts today hold immense industrial potential. The real challenge is no longer about clearing the plains. It is about whether modern industries can finally learn to harvest an ecosystem without entirely erasing it.